Well, good morning, everyone. This is Christine Robinson, Mayor of West Grey, and welcome to our April 28th special meeting of West Grey Council. We are using audio only to conduct this electronic meeting. Video is not possible at this time due to limited bandwidth in some areas of West Grey. Bandwidth is challenging our ability to do a complete video broadcast, so for now, we'll be sharing today's agenda in addition to this audio. Item 1, I'm calling the meeting to order. All members of council are present as indicated through their log-on. We have a quorum. The agenda has been posted and circulated. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the West Grey website, www.westgrey.com, courtesy of Whiteman Telecom. The technology for this meeting is being managed by staff. Please refrain from clicking buttons throughout the meeting unless prompted. Before we continue, I'd ask our Recreation Supervisor, Cody Hewlett, to give an overview of some of the other key points for this morning's meeting. Supervisor Hewlett.
Good morning. Before I begin, if you get disconnected at any time during the meeting, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID 984-9184-9644. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software. Council members and staff will be using the raise their hand feature to speak. Council will be using the green check mark to vote in favor of a motion or the red X button to vote against. Each member of council will be called upon verbally to confirm their vote for the benefit of any guests who have called in rather than joining us online. If you have any technical issues during the meeting, please send a message to myself, Cody Hewlett, the Recreation Supervisor, and I will be able to help you out.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect. Members of council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, a reminder, if you do have a declaration, please raise your hand. Supervisor Hewlett, do you see any member of council wishing to declare? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 3, comment period. Supervisor Hewlett, have we received any emails, phone calls, or correspondence submitted in our Dropbox pertaining to this comment period?
Prior to this meeting, members of the public were invited to submit their comments or questions in advance. At this moment, we have not received any questions or comments.
Thank you. So we will now move on to item 4, bylaws for first, second, and third reading. For members of council, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand. The check mark or X mark are being used when we vote. So for proposed bylaw 31-2020, Clerk Turner, please.
Okay, I do have a motion prepared. Be it resolved that bylaw number 31-2020, being a bylaw to approve a Municipality of West Grey development charges bylaw, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I move the motion.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Hutchinson, yes, I second the motion.
Thank you. So your check marks can be removed from the dashboard. Comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Townsend, then Councillor Shay.
Yes, I had a few comments about the bylaw itself. Is this the appropriate time to raise them?
Yes, it is, because following the questions and comments, we will be voting on the motion before us. Please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, I noticed some typos or spelling that I thought I should point out. And benefiting area was 1, where it should read means an area rather than R.
Okay. We're noting this.
Okay. The second one, Sorry, just got to scroll down a bit.
No problem.
It had to do with fourplex, and it has means and mean a building, and it should only have one of those. That's also in the definition.
Okay.
And under marijuana facilities, in the body of that paragraph, marijuana spelled incorrectly. Skipping down, if you go to page 12 of 17, which I believe is page 14 in the package, under time of payment of development of charges, in 3.10, it refers to for each installment, including interest. And then when you look at table 1, it implies that the interest is absorbed within our in our fee or our charge. And I wasn't sure that that was ever discussed at council. And so I wanted to raise that just so that we can confirm the council does agree that we will not be charging anything additional if people make installments versus a single payment.
Okay, so based on your what I would call housekeeping amendments, they're fine for the bylaw, but we can go to our Director of Finance and Treasurer for your just immediate question that you had. Director Mighton, please.
Yes, so depending if council wants to charge interest, the bylaw does allow us to. The interest rate is defined in the definitions to be the annual interest rate calculated at the municipality's 10-year borrowing rate plus 1. So at the time, if there was a application that was going to take advantage of the installment plan, then interest would be charged annually, the way the bylaw reads. But that is up to council to change that if they wish. But that is what's in there at this point.
Okay, excellent. I was confirming that, and then we'll get comments from other people to see whether or not there's any comment on it later.
Yeah, proceed.
Yeah, there was one other, and that was indexing, which is section 5.0. It actually says that the bylaw amounts will be adjusted annually and increased by the consumer price index. And again, that wasn't something that I thought was happening. I thought the discussion was that it would stay the same for 2 years, and within that period, we would actually go through another review to make sure council understood all the assumptions, all the data, and then we would decide whether or not to leave it for the rest of the period or not. But that's not how it reads.
Director Mighton, could you respond, please?
Yeah, the cost of living adjustment was included in there, but if council wants to remove that, they can change that, change the effective dates. That's up to council.
Okay, so that'll be part of the discussion again. And my last one has to do with section 2.1, 2.2, and Schedule A. They both seem to be redundant, and Schedule A is supposed to be the same as section 2, but with components, and there are no additional descriptions or components for each of those services. So I'm not sure why we have both.
Director Mighton.
Yeah, in our case, we don't have any components. If there was in another municipality, they might have subsections in the components listed in that Schedule A, but we don't have them in our case.
Okay, thank you. My last comment is really to do with generally the way we do bylaws. We don't seem to capitalize terms, and so when words are used interchangeably as a term and a defined term and just a word that means in general rather than that specific term, it's hard to tell the difference. but that seems to be a practice of West Grey that I'd highly recommend we change so that the reader knows what is a defined term and what isn't. And that way, if they wanted to clarify what it meant, they could go back to the definition section. But that's something we do for all bylaws. And I think that's confusing to people that have to read them. Anyway, that's all my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shay, please.
Hi, it's Councillor Shay. I wasn't able to attend the meeting where this was discussed the last meeting a week or so ago, but I did review the meeting, the recorded meeting online, and my understanding was that there was some expectation that after a few years of this 5-year rate, that we would do an additional review, perhaps more thorough, to see if the rate should actually be increased slowly and incrementally. For somebody who's just reading this document, like say a new developer moving into the area or an existing developer, and not being privy to that back conversation, this document, in looking at Schedule C, seems to suggest that we don't have a phased-in approach, which is what Schedule C is titled. We actually have a frozen approach. So just for the purpose of optics, I would suggest that we include some phasing in this Schedule C. Specifically, I would like to see in year 5 the rate for single and semi-detached dwellings go from 52.62% to 62.62%. And so I would like to move that as an amendment to this bylaw.
Yeah, it's loud. All right, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Shay?
No, I'm just making that motion.
Yep, thank you for that. Councillor Hutchinson, please. No, hang on a minute. Councillor Hergert. Please proceed, Councillor Hergert.
Yes, so in speaking to the amendment of 52 increasing to 62, I think there is definitely merit in phasing in. I'm not sure if 62 is my number. I would second it to get it on the table. So that is a second for year 5 phase in to the amount of 62%, and really looking to get that on the table just as a discussion point. You know, in that last meeting where we did discuss with our professionals in this area, we spoke to the topic of, you know, the last council did not include a full increase to the recommendation, and we hadn't noticed any change. We hadn't noticed any more building or less building. It was really just around the same mark. So until we get some data collected from, you know, from that middle point, that 2-year term or so, then we would know how to adjust. So for today, I would be happy and satisfied to leave it at a full phase in 5 years, 62%. But I think we will have to adjust. So, so that's a seconder to Councillor Shay's amendment. And I do have other comments, including the indexing, as Councillor Townsend had already mentioned, which once we decide on the phase-in amount, the indexing will become a moot point. Really, we're not going to index an increase every year, as well as phase in an increase every year. And if we continue with the indexing terminology, that wording needs to change. It's the Canadian Building Index, Canadian or Construction Building Index is the actual term. So either we'll have the indexing discussion or we'll have the phase-in discussion. We would not have both. I do appreciate Councillor Shay's comments relating to the meeting. This is not the bylaw that I thought we were going to have in front of us today. So There's a section in there that 3.6, I would like our professionals to walk me through this example. 3.6, so an industrial, residential. The development charges described in Schedules B and C of this bylaw shall be imposed on residential uses of land, buildings, and structures, including a dwelling unit accessory to a non-residential use. And in the case of a mixed-use building or structure, on the residential uses in the mixed-use building or structure, according to the type of residential unit, and calculated with respect to each of the services according to the type of residential use. So that, to me, takes me over to the creation of a second dwelling unit within a non-residential class. So it could be agricultural, anything like this. And we're still going to charge a development charge on the creation of a new unit. I don't believe that was the intent. I believe the intent of getting more building, more, if we call them rental housing, if we call them secondary dwelling units, those should not also have a development charge attached to a second dwelling unit.
Councillor Hergert, I'm going to interrupt you at this point. Clerk Turner would like to speak.
Please, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, there is a amending motion on the floor, so that should be dealt with before we get into any other business. I believe it's moved by Councillor Shay and seconded by yourself, Councillor Hergert. I just do need some clarification from Councillor Shay as to exactly what his motion is.
Councillor Shay, could you clarify your motion? We will unmute you.
Yes, it's Councillor Shay. My motion is that Schedule C be amended, specifically the year 5 rate for single and semi-detached dwellings should be changed from 52.62% to 62.62%.
Councillor Hergert, are you seconding this motion? Okay. All right. Councillor Hergert, is that the clarity on the motion?
Well, will there be further changes to Schedule C that we will contemplate? Or shall we make them all right here?
It's just on the amendment, correct? Clerk Turner, could you just clarify that for them?
Yes, I would suggest this motion is debatable, so if there's some other potential changes that the mover would also entertain, it might be the appropriate time to do so. If the mover is willing to entertain that, that is.
Director Martin, did you have any comment at this point?
Yeah, so what I think Mark was getting to, with the multiples there, the percentage, the ratio that they're at is 82.17. So is the intention that that would also go up at 62%, 62.62%, the development charge would be $3,867. So with the multiples and the apartments, 2 bedrooms, do you want to change that or leave that at the, right now the rate of 82.17 is $3,250 for multiples, and apartments with 2 bedrooms plus 78% equals $3,250. So is the intention that those rates would go up as well, or would they remain at the $3,250? So just sort of seeking clarification on the impact across all of those sections.
Right, okay. Councillor Hergert, you have the mic.
So I am agreeable to increasing those fees. And I'm not sure if the year 1 or year 2, the dates have to be those dates. I know there was a lot of discussion in our previous meeting, if we could change it as of a January 1st, and then that way it's for the whole year. Is there any conflict with that, Treasurer, Director of Finance?
Director Martin?
No, I don't believe there's any conflict with that. It's just
We
a
just have to
one-year
write it.
term. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the year 2, could we have that start January 1st of 20, we are 2020 now. We talked about a year and a half phase in, so 2022, January 1st of 2022 would be year 2 and begin phasing in. So yes, up to the 62% for semi and single. And then for multiples, I would propose another 10% increase on each of the other remainders. And we'll get down to special care. I'm not sure that we should have any fee there.
Okay, is that all you have for now?
So yeah, well, as we get to special care, I mean, do you want me to keep going? That's my special care kind of prelude.
What I'd like to do is be able to have the other speakers. So if there's one more item that you wish to speak with, but it is particular to this amending motion.
Okay, I'll leave it there for the amending motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Am I on?
You are on.
Yeah, okay. I'm just flipping between my agenda and the other. So I'm in agreement with what we've done in terms of holding it a status quo, just because of the nature of the times, and we don't want to discourage building. So, but I think from our discussion, and I believe it was Mr. Townsend that brought that forward, that we would look at in a couple of years, we would look at adjusting this. And so I'm not so sure if we get into start changing up 10% and 20%, that we're really starting to do that, when we said we would leave it status quo for a couple of years and spend some time looking at the numbers and then make our adjustments. So I don't know if we can make a footnote or something to say that first 2 years is status quo, and with pending changes coming for year 3, 4, and 5, without getting into actually trying to change the numbers now, because we don't have all the details and we haven't really had the discussion that we'd like to have. So that's my thought, is that maybe we somehow put a footnote in there to say we are going to change. And I do believe that we do need to phase in an increase over time, just because of the recommendation and the nature of our budgets and the monies that we need. So that's my thought. So that's all. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, please.
Good morning. It's Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. I agree with what Councillor Hutchinson just said. I thought our discussion was around the fact that we were going to look at status quo for a couple of years. So in my opinion, because this year is a little bit, we know we got some issues in front of us, and the uncertainty of when we can get back to work, or the developers can, I personally be looking at like a January 22 and a revisit by that date of January 2022 to consider the phase in. And I thought that's what our discussion was around. We wouldn't actually put a number in, but we would have it there as something to look forward to or act at that time. So that's where I'm at with, I thought that's kind of what was going to be coming for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Mighton, just on his comments, please.
Yeah, so that's the way this was presented, was leaving that status quo. And then once in 2022, if you decide to change it, then we would amend Schedule C, and that's where those percentages would be amended in year 3, year 4, or 5, depending on the discussion at the time, and it would just require an amendment to Schedule C. So that's why it's been presented in this format.
Good. That was my understanding. Thank you for that clarity. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
No, but that's the clarity that I was reading there. Just exactly what Director Mighton just said. So I'm not sure if we need to look at an amendment, but I'll leave that to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend, please.
Councillor Townsend, 2 points. One is I reiterate the comments that Director Mighton made, in the sense of that we were going to look at over the next 2 years to see what was actually happening and make sure that we understood, first of all, the assumptions behind the calculation that was presented at council. And we did not have the CAL meeting that would have allowed us to go through all that detail due to COVID-19. So it gives us a chance to go back to that. And also the other point was to make sure we understand the justification for increases, that are we recovering or not recovering, because that could be an issue as well. So when all is said and done, I would prefer to keep them where they are. And if we're worried that we're not recovering, well, let's do our work in 2020 and 21 and 2020 and 2021, so that we'll know at the end of that whether or not we should increase them, and we can justify it based on cost. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Shay, please.
The concern, one of the concerns I have is that if we pass this as is today with this 5-year schedule, and in 2 years come forward and say, we're reconsidering the amounts for year 3, year 4, and year 5, and we're going to adjust them up. The development community is going to say, what are you doing? You passed this schedule 2 years ago, i.e. now. You told us what the rates were going to be in 2023, 2024, and 20 and 25. We made plans based on these published rates that you passed in a bylaw, and now you're changing these rates. That's totally unfair to us. I know they will make that argument, and I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument. So if we're not intending to stick with these rates in years 3, 4, and 5, because we're going to do another review in 2 years, then why don't we just pass this schedule for years 1, 2, and 3 and delete years 4 and 5? Is that an option, Carrie, Director of Finance?
Director Maiton, please, on that question.
I know Gary Scantlin is on the line with us. I'm not sure if we can do that without then having to do a new study in that year 3 if it's not included in the bylaw. But maybe Gary would be able to, if we unmute him, might be able to provide some clarity.
Yes. Mr. Scanlon, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Through you, Madam Mayor. If you were, I guess the question is, do you want to have a 5-year bylaw or 3-year bylaw? And if we only go with 3 years, then you'll have to redo the study at the end of the 3-year term. I think what we were speaking to here was to provide you a 5-year bylaw, and for us to then consider an amendment. And with respect to the development community, we would be advertising. We go through a public process similar to what we've done this time, and we would have transparency in considering any changes that you wanted to do. And so that's the direction that we took in providing a 5-year bylaw in this fashion.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Shay?
No, so I'll leave my point standing that I do think the development community will be upset if we pass these rates for years 4 and 5, and then in a couple of years decide to change them. So I'm just going to let my original motion to amend stand.
Okay, thanks. I will be having the clerk read the motion and then calling the vote, but I do see there is one question left here. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson. I still think that we could clarify this by putting a footnote under that schedule saying that this council is, or there's, we're looking at amending, after 2 years, we're looking at amending the rates based on Schedule B, I think it is, going forward. So just some way of clarifying so that when people look at it, say, okay, it's going to stay the same, but yet it says down here that it could change. So I think that way we're making it clear that it isn't necessarily going to stay the same, and then that, that way we don't have to go through the whole study again. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to follow up on Councillor Hutchinson's question about a footnote, or is there some way in the bylaw to indicate that council will be reviewing this bylaw in a couple years' time? That's my question to staff.
Director Might.
Yeah, if I think we can add that footnote, that's you know, just a clarification on that Schedule C. It's if council wishes, that's fine.
Okay. Further,
Okay.
Councillor Hamilton.
Well, thank you for that clarity. That was one of my questions too. And but further to Councillor Shay's concern that we're posting a 5-year fixed schedule, and with no if you're to read this bylaw for the first time, you would just think, oh, the rates are frozen for 5 years. I know what the next 5 years will look like as a developer. I share that same concern, and I would be supportive of the way the bylaw was presented originally last meeting, where there was a phase in that started in 2022. And then we as council would commit to meet ahead of that phase in to then determine if that phase in was heading in the right direction based on the data information which we wanted to gather over the next couple of years. So I'd be more inclined to support the original development phase in as presented last meeting, rather than choosing to increase it by 10% in the 5th year. It seems more arbitrary, and it doesn't have the same rationale behind it. Although I recognize that the intention is just to signal to the community that rates aren't going to stay the same for all 5 years. So I don't think I can support the amendment as it is now, but I do support the intention of the amendment. In I think having it fixed for 5 years, that's not our intention. And I think having it presented the way it originally was with the phase-in, as the consultant suggested, holds us accountable to have that meeting and to revisit it. And it takes some pressure off of staff, and it takes some pressure off of council too. We're not just kicking the can down the 2 years to revisit this entire discussion. We have a plan in place, and we're just going to check in to see if it's the right plan. So can you make an amendment to an amendment, Clerk Turner?
Well, we do have a main motion and then the amendment to the main, but Clerk Turner on the question from Councillor Herder. Pardon me.
You could, or even, I'm
Councillor
not sure if you're talking just by adding that the review be done, or the council would consider reviewing, amending the rates. To add that to Schedule C, you could perhaps ask that as a friendly amendment to the mover and seconder, or you could do another further amending motion, which would be dealt with before that first amending motion.
So was Councillor Hamilton's potential amendment to the main motion?
I'm not positive. You could clarify that, Councillor Hamilton, but I thought perhaps it was just that notation in Schedule C that council would consider reviewing the rates.
I thought it was going to the main motion, but for clarification, that's up to you, Councillor Hamilton, obviously.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Robinson. So the current amendment is suggesting phasing in a percentage increase in year 5, and I would develop that idea to include phasing in that starts in year 3 as presented by the consultant last meeting.
Clerk Turner has a question.
I'm not sure if the consultant or the director of finance can recall what that phasing was proposed in year 3 and 4.
I have it here in front of me on what it was, if I may. It's in the memo on page 5. And it speaks to holding the rate 53% for year 1 and 2, then increasing to 68%, 84%, and then 100% in year 5. I think this is a clear signal to the community that the intention is to have rates that reflect the changing circumstances over the years, And then as a council, we commit to reviewing that before they kick in. And if as a council, we decide this is still not the time to, we're still suffering from the pandemic, or building hasn't been the way we anticipated, then of course we can make those changes then. But I think it's a clearer signal. We're more clearly communicating to the community in this way.
Clerk Turner, please.
That would appear to be quite a deviation from the amending motion. But I suppose the mover and seconder could be asked if that would be considered. I'm anticipating what that response will be, but be asked by the mayor.
Okay, at this point I will, because I'd like to, if you will, address the main motion and the amendment motion, keeping it absolutely clear, not only for council, but those that are listening in. So to Councillor Hamilton's amendment, the mover of the motion, Councillor Shay, is that suitable for you or not?
This is Councillor Shay. Yes, that's suitable for me.
Thank you. As the seconder, Councillor Hergert, is it suitable?
52, 68, 84, and 100.
Councillor Hamilton, is that the clarity?
Thank you, Councillor. I think they had 53, just to clarify. But
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Director Mighton, please, on that clarity.
Yeah, the 52.62 gets it to the 3250 for the charge, the 3,250. So that approximate 53%, but it works out to 52.62 to get us to that 3,250.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Hamilton?
No, thank you. Thanks for considering this amendment.
Okay, I am going to go to Councillor Townsend in one moment, but I am saying to the clerk, please be ready to read the amended motion at the appropriate time. Councillor Townsend, please.
I had trouble hearing the percentages that they were talking about.
Okay.
If that could be repeated, and then I have a comment.
Sure. On the percentages, Director Mighton, please.
So the proposal is 68% in year 3, 84% in year 4, and it would be at 100% in year 5. So the rates would be $3,250 for year 1 and 2, $3,250 would go to $4,200 in year 3, $5,188 in year 4, and then the full $6,176 in year 5. And that is just for the single family. We haven't spoke to whether you want to phase in the multiples and the 2-bedroom plus apartments or not. They're currently at a higher ratio. Do you want those to phase up to the 100% as well? That so far that hasn't been discussed.
Yeah, we should get that clarity. Councillor Townsend, you have the mic.
Okay, thank you. My comment was going to be, if we use those percentages, because I wondered if that's what they were, then we're actually saying in year 5, we are going to go to the full 100% of the rate that was calculated in the study, which we don't understand. We don't understand the assumptions because we were challenging them at the last meeting. We made a commitment within 2 years to do that. So I would go even further and say, if we are actually going to say we want an increase, let's have an automatic increase that says it's 52% plus the, 52.62 plus the building construction price index each year, and put that in the table, right? So at least you've got a minimal increase. But if at the end we are going to go to double our rates in year 5 up to that, we are not going to have development. No one in their right mind would agree to that if we're sitting here saying we don't fully understand from the discussion and the time we had at that meeting to go through all the assumptions, which we didn't, which is why we made the commitment to go back and review them all. I think that would be a gross error.
Anything further?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the amending motion? Okay, that was my pause to look at the dashboard here. Clerk Turner, could you please read the amending motion that was moved by Councillor Shay, seconded by Councillor Hergert?
Actually, I'd like to, but as the Director of Finance noted, I do need some clarification if year 3, 4, and 5 are going to change for singles from 60 to 84 to 100, then to have a complete resolution or amending motion, I need direction on the multiples in apartment 2-bedroom plus. If it's 68% in year 3, is it going to increase the same percentage from 53 to 68% for singles? As same thing for year 4. If it's 84%, is the multiples apartments going to correspondingly increase percentage-wise? And again, year 5, 100%, then those two would be increased accordingly. Maybe Director of Finance has further comment.
Oh, absolutely. Director Mighton, please.
Yeah, so currently the schedule shows multiples at 82.17%. We could do in leave it the same for year 3, year 4, move it to 80. This is just an example of a scenario. Year 4, move it to 84%. Same with year 3, keep it the 2-bedroom plus apartments at the 78% and move it to 84% in year 4. And then all 3 of those rates would go to 100% in year 5. So just because those are already starting at a higher percentage, so instead of rolling back to 68%, we could continue with their current 82 and 78 for year 3 on the 2 rates, and then move them in the same phasing for year 4 and year 5. But that's just an example of, but we can do, it's flexible. It's just that would be one sample.
Okay, so how do you want to deal with this? We went from status quo for the bylaw to be prepared for today to a huge discussion that's taking us in a different direction. So I'm looking for hands up in terms of the direction that you wish to go in. Starting with Councillor Hergert, please.
Yes, I'm favorable to the recommendation that Carrie just proposed, which would be year 4, increasing to 84% for the multiples and apartments, 2 bedrooms. I think between Carrie, who has worked diligently with the professionals that do, economists that do this every day, I think we should be willing to take their recommendation, gather our data for the next 2 years, and come back and look at this. But I think these rates increasing towards 100% in year 3 will be our check and balance to make sure that we come back before year 3 and revisit this. But I think our professionals, the economists and Carrie, have recommended to us that we implement this amount of development charge, just in whole, the whole recommended development charge, because that's the amount that it takes to recover increased development. So just holding it at 52%, right now we're making a statement saying we're only recovering half of what it takes for new development. So I think any increase year 3, year 4, to keep moving towards 100% recapture on the cost of developing, I think that is what we need to be doing. So I would be supportive of the year 4 and 5 increases in the multiple area and the apartment area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shay.
It's Councillor Shay. I would also be supportive of Director Mighton's proposal regarding multiples in 2-bedroom apartments. I would also be like to add to adjust the amendment slightly to include the footnote that Councillor Hutchinson recommended, that notes that the latter years will be reviewed in, this whole schedule will be reviewed in 2022.
Okay. Further?
No.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, I'm supportive of this direction as well, because I'm recalling how I might not have the word right, stratified, or just how before our development charge was the same for all kinds of buildings. This development charge has been divided between the different sizes of buildings. So to change one and not change the rest would throw that whole balance off. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And yes, to put that footnote in will be key as well, to keep ourselves accountable, and also to indicate to our community that this is really important that we review this in a couple of years' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Councillor Townsend, thank you. earlier in this discussion, there was some very good points made about if we're not going to put a footnote in, how will people know that we are going to increase them or going to review them? I'm going to take that same argument and apply it to this one. If we put in rates that are heading towards 100% of this new calculation, and we heard from the developers the concern about doubling what they're paying now, and that's what it would translate to, basically 100% increase. Where is the trust factor that says that they will in fact get a decent deal, that it won't go to the 100%, their rates won't double? Because if they're in the middle of a major subdivision, which there's one underway and one potentially to follow, how do they know that we are going to do that review that will result in a more reasonable charge to them? They have no assurance. On the other hand, if we kept them the way it's in the bylaw today, then it means if we want to increase them, not only do we have to go through the work that we said we were going to do at the last meeting, but we also show evidence as to why we need to do that. And I didn't feel we had that, and I think the vote said we didn't feel we had that. So I think leave it alone gives the best level of trust and expectation to our development people, because they heard all that. Not all of them have heard this discussion, and they will not know that putting it at 100% means, yeah, we'll look at it and we may drop it, we may not. I think we're betraying that discussion that we had with them in an open area, and I realize they could have been here, but I think they thought we were going along with that decision. So anyway, I won't be supporting this or any increase other than what we told the developers we were going to do at the last meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Is there anyone else on the amending motion? Councillor Townsend, are you taking your hand off? Yeah, good. Councillor Hutchinson?
I agree somewhat with Councillor Townsend in that, like, we haven't said for sure we're going to go to 100%. I do agree that we do need to put a footnote that we're going to review our schedule. I'm wondering if we could have done like a percentage rather than going to the full 100, just to say that we are looking at an increase. I just don't want to scare people off, developers off, and say, wow, you know, like 5 years it's going to be double, and discourage building, which, you know, again, we want the building. So I don't know whether we could have changed the percentages. I know Councillor Shay started with 10%, but like even if we're looking at 75% by the end, and you know, giving people the idea that we are increasing our fees, but we're not necessarily going to go to 100% because we'd like to look at get some more details, some more information. So that's my concern. So I'm up in the air at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When we speak in percentages, it does sound like a big jump when we speak about doubling or 100%. When we speak in dollars, we're talking the difference between 3,000-ish to 6,000-ish for a single detached home. And so when I think about the construction, like what we would pay to build a brand new home, it's not a huge burden. It's not a huge cost, additional cost to the homeowner. So I do think this is going in the right direction. And when you think of it in dollars instead of percentages, it starts making a lot more sense. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Turner, could you read the amending motion, and then I'll call the vote.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby amends Schedule C to Bylaw 31-2020 as follows. Schedule C, Year 3, single and semi-detached dwelling, 68%, multiples 80, and then that'll be it for Year 3. Year 4, 84%, single and semi-detached dwellings, multiples 84%, apartments 2 bedrooms 84%. Year 5, singles and semis, multiples, and apartments 2 bedrooms plus 100%. And further, that council commits to reviewing Schedule C in January 2022. Just for clarification, I did not change, I didn't know if I had direction or consensus to change any of those year 1 to 5 dates that are listed in Schedule C as such such as year one, April 28th, 2020 to April 27th, 2021. So those yearly dates, as shown in Schedule C, I have not changed in the motion, unless there's direction to do so.
There was discussion for the January date, so I'd go to the mover and seconder for that. But I do see a hand up here, which is Councillor Herger, please.
Yes, so I would support changing the date of that. We had all talked at our last meeting that January 1st, when the prospectus comes out from the builders and so on, that they would know that that year, January until December, would be a certain rate. I think that is important. And it also shows that we were listening to developers. You know, we need to have our ducks in a row with them, you know, so that we're together and they know the plan. I haven't heard any discussion about the special care or special dwelling units at 100%. And I open that up because we are talking about Schedule C. And if there should be a change or an amendment to it, I think the time to discuss that is now.
Clerk Turner, could you respond?
I suppose that's part of Schedule C discussion. Yeah, again, the mover and seconder, if there's a wish to change that, it's your motion as it stands.
Okay, so first on Councillor Shay on the date to January 1st, and then changing the, well, first on the date. Are you clear on that? Councillor Shay.
Councillor Shay, yes, if that was an expressed important wish from the developer community, I'd be fully supportive of that.
Okay, and Councillor Herger, you are the seconder for that, so that's obviously.
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, thanks. And then on your further amendment that you're suggesting?
Well, so I'd like to have a bit of a discussion here. At our last meeting, I was a bit fumbled around special care facilities and special care / special dwelling. And really, as it goes to the definitions, so I'm finding this on page, let me see here, page 8 of 17 of the whole report, being page 10 in our agenda for today. And I'm curious if these are related to like a proposed redevelopment of Rockwood. Would these be the development charges that would be applied to a new facility, special care facility?
So Rockwood would be exempt because it's
upper tier.
That's right, or it could be a lower tier, but it would be exempt. But I want our Director of Finance and Treasurer to clarify that for me on my response, please.
Yeah, if it was actually the county that was doing the redevelopment, it would be exempt from development charges.
Thanks for that. Okay, further, Councillor Herger.
So it wouldn't be any private care facilities or anything like that. It's just because Rockwood would be an upper tier or a municipal situation.
That's right.
Okay. So like an Abbey Field or any of those are going to be charged, right? Those would be a special care facility and be charged the development charge for a new unit.
So that's my understanding. Just rather quickly, Director Mighton?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, further, Councillor Herger?
No, I was seeking that clarification last meeting, so I appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. All right, where are we at? Clerk Turner, do you have everything in the amending motion at this point where I could at least call the vote? Or are you seeking any further clarification? I want to make sure everybody is clear on everything here.
I may need some clarification from our consultant in terms of how we changed that. Year one was April 28th, 2020 to April 27th, 2021. Somewhere along the line, council wants to change to January 1st, 2022. So I'm not sure if it'd go April 28th, 2020, if you could go more than the 1 year to December 31st, 2021, and then every year after that is a 1 year increment, which takes you to the April 27th, 2025.
Mr. Scanlin? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we can, within that time horizon, we can adjust the dates appropriately. We didn't have specific direction, so we set it on the anniversary of the bylaw. But to extend year one to go to the January 1st, 2022 is not a problem. And then subsequent to that, go January 1st, each subsequent year, that's fine.
Okay, Clerk Turner?
Right, so then I would suggest April 28th, 2020 to December 31st, 2021, year one, and January 1st, 2022 for year two, to December 31st, 2022, year three, January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, January 1st for year four, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, year five. Oh, sorry, that should be 23. Year five would end up being January 1st, 2020. Oh no, sorry, that's right. Year five would be January 1st, 2025 to April 7th, 27th, 2025.
Okay. Mover and seconder, starting with Councillor Shay. Are you fine with those dates?
It's Councillor Shay. Yes, I'm fine.
Councillor Hergert as the seconder, are you fine with those dates?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Okay. I will be asking for a recorded vote on this amending a motion vote. So if the clerk could be prepared for that. Is there any other questions on the amending motion? First of all right, I'm not seeing any. Does anybody need the amending motion written? Oh, sorry, it's been written, but does anybody wish the amending motion to be read again? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I don't need it to be read again, but I
Okay.
just would like to make sure that we have a footnote in there, which we talked about, that as in the second year in 2022, that we're going to reevaluate these rates, and the rates may be adjusted.
We got that, but yes, thank you very much for forwarding that comment again. Okay, this is a recorded vote that I've asked for. So Clerk Turner, please.
Just for clarification, this recorded vote is for the amending motion.
Oh, hang on a second. But also I'm going to say that use your check mark and your X mark as well. Okay, thank you, Clerk Turner, for the interruption.
Councillor Hamilton,
Yes.
Councillor Hergert,
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson,
Councillor Hutchinson, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
I'm just reading my notes here, Clerk. I'm sorry. I'm undecided right now. I just need a second here, please.
That's fine. You could take the time that you need. Clerk Turner, are we able to go on with the other calls, or do we have to wait for the deputy?
The procedure bylaw says recorded votes be alphabetical order, so Deputy Mayor Hutchinson should vote.
That's fine. I also like to ask questions, so that is fine for clarity on this.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't unmuted. I'm sorry. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, no. This is for the amendment, correct there, Mayor Robinson?
Yes, it's on the amending motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Robinson,
No.
Councillor Shay,
Councillor Shay, yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Councillor Townsend, no.
So the amending motion is passed 4-3, recorded vote.
Okay, Clerk Turner, what is the next step then?
So there have been some comments from Councillor Townsend. I see, I would assume those could be incorporated into amended bylaw. I believe there may be some further discussion, perhaps on the main motion, if in fact there is.
So the main motion is before us at this point.
That's correct.
Could you please read the main motion? It was moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Clerk Turner, could you read the motion?
Again, moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that bylaw number 31-2020, being a bylaw to approve a Municipality of West Grey development charges bylaw, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed as amended and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. The amendments would include the amending motion that just passed, as well as some of the little errors or duplications and spelling errors, as well as looking at sections 2.1 and 2.2 that Councillor Townsend noted. So, and the indexing, of course, as well.
Anything
and the
further?
Interest on the installment. Have we clarified those at this point? So those are those two items: the indexing and the interest on the installments that have to be clarified at this point.
So I'm going to go with the mover and seconder first, Councillor Townsend. Is that clear on your motion, and is there anything further? Councillor Townsend.
Yes, if I had a choice, I'd like to withdraw my move of the motion.
Okay, you have that choice.
The amendment.
Okay, so wait a minute. I'm going to double check with the clerk. I would say it's okay. You can. Clerk Turner, please.
So yes, Councillor Townsend, if that's regarding the indexing issue, I don't believe there was a motion moved or seconded for that. So if you just want to withdraw that comment, we can certainly leave it as is unless there's other direction.
So could I please have the motion read that Councillor Townsend moved and Councillor Hutchinson? The main motion, Clerk Turner.
I did read that. Just
No, it's the main motion, which is.
yeah, the main motion I had read just a minute ago. However, I'll read it again.
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Townsend, second by Councillor Hutchinson. Be resolved that bylaw number 31-2020, being a bylaw to approve the Municipality of West Grey development charges bylaw, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed as amended and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. And that, of course, includes the amendments, the amending motion that was passed. It includes some of the errors or duplications noted by Councillor Townsend, the indexing and the sections 2.1, 2.2 we'll look at, and then the indexing at this point remains unchanged as unless there's further direction from council on that.
Okay, so thank you for the recap. I certainly needed it, so perhaps everybody else did. So Councillor Townsend, are you still withdrawing your moving of that motion as, oh, Clerk Turner?
Again, there was no mover, it was just a notation made, so I believe, at least by Councillor Townsend, I believe now that that is not an issue for Councillor Townsend in terms of the indexing, unless it is with any other members of council.
Got it, okay. Anything further, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, the recording will show that I moved the motion, but that's fine because if you ask for a new mover, that's quite okay with me. I'm just so adamantly against it, I do not want to move it.
Okay. So you are not moving this?
That's
well, the motion has been moved and seconded, and wish to withdraw the motion. That's the new one.
No, take the time you need, Clerk Turner, on this procedure.
Perhaps the easiest thing to do, Councillor Townsend, perhaps you would move to withdraw your motion. And if that could be seconded, that would then bring it back for a new mover and seconder.
Okay. Councillor Townsend, would you be inclined to do that?
I couldn't hear him, sorry.
He's
Sure,
gonna,
Councillor Townsend, if you wish to remove yourself as a mover, perhaps just move a motion that you withdraw your moving of resolution 8420. If you can get a seconder, which I would hope there'd be consideration for that, then another mover and perhaps seconder could entertain the bylaw motion.
I would go that route then, please.
okay, perfect. Is there a seconder for that? And I see Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I'll second that motion to have Councillor Townsend remove his motion. But then I would like to also make the motion to move this forward.
Okay, we'll wait on that, and I've got you noted here to do that. So on the withdrawal, do we need to vote, Clerk Turner? Okay, I'm going to take, yeah, I will take the vote on the withdrawal in one moment. We have a mover and seconder, but I see a hand up. Councillor Herger. Your mic, yeah. Go ahead. Councillor Herger, please go ahead.
So I was just going to speak in support of this motion to remove Councillor Townsend. And
okay.
So can we call that vote, please?
Yeah, when I have everybody that wishes to speak to it, but thank you for letting us know how you're going to vote. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to this motion? And I do see Councillor Hutchinson with your hand up.
Right, so I'm conflicted, I guess. I do want to see us move forward. I think we've put a stalemate for our status quo for a couple of years. I do think it's important that we let the public know that we're going to make some adjustments and that we are probably going to increase the
Councillor Hutchinson, I think I know the direction you're going in, which will have your motion brought forward, but I'm just, if your comment is not germane to the motion to withdraw, do you mind if I call the vote, or do you need to still speak at this point?
No, that's fine. I just
want
to make sure we get the message out there that we're changing things.
You got it. Anything further on the withdrawal motion? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just some clarity, because I think this is the first time we've had a motion withdrawn. So all the work we've just crafted falls apart. None of it will be in place if this motion's withdrawn, correct?
No. Clerk Turner, just for clarity, or Director Mike?
Once this amending motion is dealt with, the motion can be introduced.
Okay.
By another mover and seconder.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions on the withdrawal motion? Seeing none, I am calling the question on the motion before us. Please signify yes with a check mark, X as a no. Okay, here we go. As mayor, I am voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how do you vote?
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchinson, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shay, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shay, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, yes.
Thank you. That motion does carry. All right, clear the dashboard, please, of the check marks, including myself. And now I'm looking for, I do have indication of a motion from Councillor Hutchinson, and also you have additional comments. I'm going to call on you to speak first here. Councillor Hutchinson.
Right, so as I was saying, I agree that I think the good thing is we've made a couple year status quo that gives people a bit of a chance to get going again, get our building back up. I think within that time period, if people see that we're looking to increase our development charges, if they're really, really concerned, I'm sure we'll hear from them. And I think it gives people an opportunity to look at that. And then it'll also give us an opportunity to reevaluate. So I'm not saying we are going to go to 100%, but at least we put it in there as a possibility. And as Councillor Hamilton has said, that $3,000 is not a big increase when you look at overall. I guess the unfortunate thing is that we're comparing to other municipalities that have zero. So that's where we're at. Anyways, yes, I will move to accept this, given that we have all the changes that we put in there. Thank you.
So I will need a seconder on this, and that will be Councillor Hamilton. Are you seconding this motion?
Yes, Mayor Robinson, I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Clerk Turner, can you just read it over, and then I'm going to ask if there's any questions, and then I'll take the vote.
Moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that bylaw number 31-2020, being a bylaw to approve a Municipality of West Grey development charges bylaw, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed as amended and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Okay, questions, comments, starting with Councillor Hergert.
Yes, to the point of indexing, will we remove that section 5.0 and 5.01 then from the whole bylaw?
Well, that's a question. Absolutely. I'll start with Director Mighton on that and then see where we go.
Yeah, that's entirely up to council. If you want to just remove that that section 5 to not do any indexing, that's, yeah, at council's discretion.
Mr. Scantlin, please. Oh, hang on a minute, Councillor Hergert. I'm going to go to Mr. Scantlin.
Sure.
Scantlin, pardon me.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if we do a slight word change, I think it would be adequate. Instead, right now it says shall be indexed. And that means that we don't have to go back to council for any adjustments. If we change it and say may, that means that a council resolution must be passed in order to index the charge. So if it's satisfactory, we can just make that that one word change, and that would address the situation.
Well, I like that for sure. Anyway, Councillor Hergert, you have the mic.
Well, I don't like that. I think that gives a lot of uncertainty to builders. You know, we were just trying to say how much will it cost, and here we're saying we could change it just based on the Stats Canada non-residential building construction price index. Like, so that would just mean every year we could come back and change it in another way. So I think the idea of indexing is not what we want to do. It doesn't provide clarity or certainty for those that would be paying the development charge. So I would like to see the 5.0 and 5.1 removed.
Okay, anything further? Councillor Townsend, please.
Councillor Townsend, yeah, I agree that we should remove it because, again, it creates uncertainty. I just find it an amazing contradiction that we're concerned about this because it creates uncertainty, and yet that's exactly what we've done with the other amendment. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other further comments? All right, how are we dealing with the word change, if anything? Councillor Hergert?
That we move a motion that we remove 5.0 and 5.1.
So Councillor Hutchinson as mover, are you okay with that? And then I'll look to Councillor Hamilton as the seconder. Councillor Hutchinson first.
Yes, I'm okay with removing that.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton, how do you feel about that?
Councillor Hamilton, yes, that's acceptable.
Okay, anything further? Questions or comments? All right, Councillor Hamilton. Your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you. Just to ask for a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And anybody else? All right. Clerk Turner, could you obviously handle this, but could you please read the motion before asking everyone for their vote?
By Councillor Hutchinson, second by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby removes section 5.0 and 5.1 in Bylaw 31-2020 as amended.
Okay, call the vote. There's no further comments or questions on the screen.
Okay, so Councillor Hamilton,
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hergert,
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchison,
Sorry, Councillor Hutchinson, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchison,
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, not in favor.
Mayor Robinson,
No.
Councillor Shay,
Councillor Shay, yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Councillor Townsend, no.
the amending resolution 87-2020 is approved by a vote of 4-3.
Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to Bylaw 32-20, or do we have anything further on this? Oh,
There still needs to be obviously a vote on the Bylaw 31-2020 as amended. I'm not
yes,
sure
of
at this time
course.
if all questions of council have been answered regarding this bylaw.
All right, so that's right. We are looking for a motion to pass Bylaw 31-2020, correct? Clerk Turner? I'll just wait for a moment.
Yes, there is the matter of interest on installments. I'm not sure if there's been direction there, and I'm not sure if there's any other comments from council before the bylaw is put to question.
Councillor Herger, please.
So the section 2.3.1 being second units, I have a question about this. Will a development charge apply to an accessory unit within a residential unit or outside of a residential unit? Will there be a development charge on a new secondary apartment?
Director Mayton. Oh, or either you have the choice of answering it or I could go to Mr. Scanlin. Okay, Mr. Scanlin, please. Just get your mic.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, secondary units, if you have a single family home or if you add an additional unit, should be exempt.
And the language in our policy, I don't really see that it says that. So I'm looking for that language.
Okay.
Just so it aligns with the province, you know, we would need more housing and they open that option of secondary units. So the last thing I think West Grey would want to do is to tax that.
Can you respond to that, Mr. Scanlon?
Yes, I'm just taking a look at the appropriate spot.
Thank you.
So within the regulations, it says that you can add, for a single family home, you can add an additional, up to 2 additional apartments as long as you don't more than double the size of the house. So they would be exempt. And for medium and high density, you can add 1 additional unit. So that that is provided within the legislation. And the province is making adjustments through Bill 108 to allow for additional secondary units when housing units are constructed.
I just, in our language under the 3.6, it doesn't exclude or make an exception for those accessory units. This talks about development charge will be imposed on residential uses of land, even if that's in some agricultural portion or some industrial portion that would have an accessory unit for residential. And it talks about calculating it with respect to each of the services according to the type of residential use. So here in our development charge bylaw under 3.6, it doesn't make any connection to that Bill 108 or the accessory uses or the increase of apartments without the charge of development, without the development charge.
Right. Well, I think that's,
I just want to make sure we have the right wording. I know what our intent is.
okay. So I think, so I've answered the most of the units that we've talked about would be exempt. This here, if the example is I have a, some type of commercial unit, like commercial building, 5,000 square feet, 2,000, whatever, and I choose to put an apartment above it, then it is not exempt in that particular instance. That's where it's saying if you're in, if you're adding an apartment into a non-residential use or in a mixed use, then you would be imposing the charge on that apartment.
So is there like a one extra sentence where we could say this does not apply to accessory units described in Bill 108 or secondary units?
As soon as the bill is passed, it's law, so it would be in effect.
But it's not right now, right?
If we include it in the bylaw or not. So,
okay.
If you want to add additional clarification within the bylaw, we could do that.
I think a one sentence connector to that More Homes, More Choices Act would be valuable, because right now that legislation is not passed, right? So we're anticipating its passage, but as of right now, it's not there.
Yeah, and I would expect that all of that should be put, you've probably seen our correspondence, keeping council up to date on the legislation. So the latest adjustments closed on April 20th, and we would expect that over the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll see that legislation finalized. So I guess the question is, if there's anything, any applications pending that fit into that category, then you would probably want to make the adjustment to this bylaw to address it. If there's nothing that's pending, then it'll automatically adjust with the legislation. So I'm at your disposal. What you would like us to do?
Well, I think for the encouragement of these secondary units, like the province has opened up, I think that is what is needed in West Grey. And I just, for those 6 to 8 weeks while we wait for the province to finalize that, I think we should have some, you know, we've thought of it, a conscientious sentence saying we've thought about it and it does not apply to these secondary units as described in the More Homes, More Choices. That way it ties in. If something changes with that More Homes, More Choices Act, then it's in here as we've talked about it, it's been contemplated, we've thought about it, it's tied in together.
Okay. Clerk Turner, do you want to just mention something on that, if you like?
Yes, I think Mr. Scantlin is basically saying it would be enshrined in law or in the Development Charges Act and regulations. So I don't want to get into the, you know, I don't think it would be appropriate in the Development Charges bylaw to start citing all sections of the act to justify the contents of the bylaw, but it sounds like Mr. Scanlon is able to implement some specific wording, and I think it's section 3.6 that to accommodate that concern.
Okay, can we move on from that point, or is there anything further, Councillor Herger?
No, that's all I have.
Any further comments on the main motion? Members of council, signify by raising your hand if you have any further comments or questions. All right, I'm not seeing any. Clerk Turner, could you please read the motion again? And we have a recorded vote requested.
Be resolved that bylaw number 31-2020, being a bylaw to approve a Municipality of West Grey development charges bylaw, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed as amended and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Those amendments include the amending resolution regarding the sections 5.0 and 5.1, as well as the earlier one regarding the percentages on the in the year 5 change of dates, and the review commitment by council of the rates as well. Includes the spelling or duplications as cited by Councillor Townsend. It also will likely, I guess Mr. Scantlin will provide wording, appropriate wording for 3.6 as requested by Councillor Townsend, and it sounds like council is supportive of that. I think we have all of those listed, so.
Okay, before we go to the recorded vote, Councillor Hamilton, were you asking for a recorded vote on this one, or was it the previous?
Thanks for asking, Mayor Robinson. I must admit I got a little turned around. Yes,
Yep.
on this, please. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
If not you, I was going to, so that's fine. Okay, so I do want to ensure that everybody votes with a check mark or an X on the screen, but then the clerk is going to call the your names as well. So all those in favor of the main motion that's been read, please signify with a check mark. Those that are not in favor, please signify with an X mark. Clerk Turner, take it away.
Councillor Hamilton.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hergert.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchison.
Councillor Hutchinson, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchison.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, not in favor.
Mayor Robinson.
No.
Councillor Shay.
Councillor Shay, yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Councillor Townsend, definitely not.
The main motion is carried 4-3, recorded vote.
Okay. Now, are we clear to move on? Are we on proposed bylaw 31-2020 at this stage, Clerk Turner? Is there anything further we need to do?
The motion for the confirming bylaw would be in order at this point. I will read it for.
Yep, so that is
information.
proposed bylaw 32-2020. Please move ahead, Clerk Turner.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 32-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the April 28th, 2020 special council meeting, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes, I am.
Councillor Shay, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Shay, I'm seconding the motion.
Comments, questions? Councillor Hergert, can you take your X mark off, or check mark? Comments, questions? All right, all those in favor signify with a check mark, and those opposed signify with an X mark, please. All right, I'll start. I'm in favor of the motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting on this motion.
Councillor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you are voting. Councillor Hamilton?
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson in favor.
Councillor Shay, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shay, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend in favor.
That motion does carry. Thank you. Item 5 is question period. Supervisor Hewlett, are there any questions out there? Oh, everybody please remove your check mark, please.
We have not received any questions at this time.
All right. Okay, so now we are going to move on to item 6. Clerk Turner, could you please read the motion on the adjournment?
Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 10:31 a.m. to meet again on May 5th, 2020 at 10 a.m. for the call of the mayor.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, are you moving the motion?
Councillor Townsend moves the motion.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding the motion?
Councillor Hutchinson seconds the motion.
All right, thank you. On the motion, signify by yes with a check mark, no for an X mark on the adjournment. All right, I'll start. As mayor, I'm in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shay, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shay, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchinson, yes.
Thank you. That motion does carry. We stand adjourned for this meeting. Now I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break, and then I will call the meeting of our West Grey Committee of the Whole meeting to order. So 5 minutes and we will start again. All right, please clear your check marks off the board.